Hello everyone. My greetings to one and all. This is the 7th session on indifference curve analysis. In the previous sessions, you have understood about the budget line and its shifts. You have understood about the consumer's preferences in the form of indifference curve and map. I am Poonam Vohra from Economics Learning Center. This session focuses on the equilibrium of a consumer through indifference curve analysis. So let's understand. In order to understand the consumer's equilibrium, there are certain assumptions. 1. The consumer is a rational consumer who aims to maximize satisfaction or wants to reach the highest possible indifference curve. 2. Consumers' preferences are ranked and not measured. 3. As the consumer obtains more and more units of a good, the rate at which he is willing to sacrifice the other good goes on decreasing. That is, the law of diminishing marginal utility operates. 4. Utility is an increasing function of consumption. That is, preferences are monotonic, or more quantity consumed means more utility, or higher indifference curve represents higher utility level. 5. Prices of the two goods and money income of the consumer does not change. Assuming that entire income is spent on consuming both the goods, the consumer achieves equilibrium when the following two conditions are satisfied. 1. When marginal rate of substitution of X for Y is same as the ratio of price of X to Y, or market rate of exchange, where marginal rate of substitution is the rate at which the consumer is willing to sacrifice Y to obtain an additional unit of X, and market rate of exchange is the rate at which the consumer has to sacrifice Y to obtain an additional unit of X. Diagrammatically speaking, the slope of indifference curve is equal to the slope of the budget line. And 2. Marginal rate of substitution continuously falls. That is, marginal rate of substitution must be diminishing at the point of equilibrium. And diagrammatically speaking, indifference curve must be convex at the point of equilibrium. There may be a situation when marginal rate of substitution is not equal to the market rate of exchange. In that case, there would be then disequilibrium. That is, either marginal rate of substitution of X for Y is greater than the ratio of price of X to Y, or marginal rate of substitution of X for Y is less than the price ratio of X to Y. Let's understand these aspects slightly in more details. Let's understand the consumer's choice, keeping in view his budget constraint and his level of satisfaction. The budget constraint is given by budget line RS. Consumers' different levels of satisfaction are given by the indifference map, with IC1 representing the lowest level of satisfaction, IC2 the next higher level, and IC3 the highest level of satisfaction. By making a choice of a combination of two goods which lie on IC3, like point D, is unattainable because it is beyond the budget of the consumer. The consumer can opt for either point A, point B or point C, as all 3 points are attainable. But one can notice that point A and point C are on the lowest level of satisfaction. So the consumer will not prefer both these points. The aim of the consumer is to achieve the highest level of satisfaction. With the constraint of the budget line, highest indifference curve which the consumer can achieve is IC2, and hence the consumer's choice would be point B, as it represents optimum consumption, where the consumer would consume OM, quantity of good X, and ON, quantity of good Y. To sum up, points A and C represent lower satisfaction. Point D is unattainable. So these points will not be chosen by the consumer. Consumer's choice would be point B, as it is attainable and shows the point of optimum consumption. Continuing further, one has to understand why point A is not the point of consumer's choice. It is so because it shows disequilibrium, where marginal rate of substitution is less than the market rate of exchange. That is, willingness to pay is less than the prevailing market price. It implies that to obtain more of X, the consumer is willing to sacrifice less units of Y than the market requires. Or the consumer values less than what market values. He is willing to pay a price lower than the market price. This induces the consumer to reduce the consumption of X and consume more of Y. So more of Y and less of X is purchased. By doing so, marginal rate of substitution starts rising. The consumer stops reducing the consumption of X till marginal rate of substitution rises enough to become equal to market rate of exchange. Let us understand this aspect with the help of a diagram. Now, consumer's budget line shows the prevailing market price. In order to have a slope of the straight line at point A, one can take any 2 points like point D and point H to find the slope. So one finds that slope at point A is dB by BH. Similarly, one can find slope at point A for indifference curve, which shows his willingness to pay. For that, a tangent is drawn at that point. Any 2 points are taken. So points taken are point K and point C. So one finds the slope of a curve at point A is KF by FC. So one can notice that dB is equal to KF, but FC is less than BH. It implies that the slope of a straight line, that is dB by BH, is greater than the slope of a curve, that is KF by FC. Or it justifies that willingness to pay is less than the prevailing market price. Hence, point A is not the point of consumer's choice. Similarly, point C is also not the point of consumer's choice, because it also shows disequilibrium, where marginal rate of substitution is greater than the market rate of exchange, implying that consumers' willingness to pay is more than the prevailing market price. As a result, the consumer buys more of X and less of Y. Hence, marginal rate of substitution falls. The consumer continues to consume more of X till willingness to pay is same as the prevailing market price of the two commodities. This can be justified by comparing the slopes of a straight line, that is budget line, implying prevailing market price, and that of indifference curve, implying willingness to pay. So far as straight line is concerned, the slope at point C is by taking any 2 points on the straight line like point B and point F. So the slope is BE by EF. To find the slope of a curve at point C, one needs to draw a tangent and any 2 points can be taken. Points taken are point K and point J. So the slope of a curve at point C is KH by HJ. One can notice that the slope of indifference curve is greater than that of budget line, implying that marginal rate of substitution is greater than the market rate of exchange, or willingness to pay is much more than the prevailing market price. Hence, point C is also not the point of consumer's choice. It can be then concluded that given the consumer's preferences, his income and market prices of the two goods that he consumes, the consumer would choose that combination which gives him highest utility. Assuming that the entire income is spent by the consumer on consuming both the goods, equilibrium is achieved when the following conditions are satisfied. 1. Marginal rate of substitution of X for Y is equal to market rate of exchange, or delta Y by delta X is equal to price ratio of X to Y. Diagrammatically speaking, slope of indifference curve is same as the slope of budget line, and at the point of equilibrium, indifference curve is convex in shape. This has already been understood that at point A, marginal rate of substitution is less than the price ratio, which implies that willingness to pay is less than the prevailing market price. Also, at point C, marginal rate of substitution is greater than the price ratio of X to Y, implying that willingness to pay is greater than the prevailing market price. And both these points are on indifference curve, represent lower satisfaction, and hence are not the consumer's choice. So neither of the 2 points can be the equilibrium position. Also, they do not fulfill both the conditions of equilibrium. Point B is the point of optimum consumption and fulfills all the conditions of equilibrium. That is, at this point, marginal rate of substitution of X for Y is equal to market rate of exchange. Slope of indifference curve is same as slope of budget line. Indifference curve is convex in shape, and hence willingness to sacrifice is same as prevailing market price, or what the consumer has to sacrifice. So point B is the point of consumer's choice, and hence consumers' equilibrium. I hope you have understood the consumer's equilibrium diagrammatically and theoretically too. With this, the session comes to an end, and also the subunit on indifference curve analysis gets complete. Though you have answered few questions, but these are definitely not enough. So answer all the questions as given in the assignment in order to have a complete grasp of the topic. The next session would focus on demand analysis. Till then, keep reading and keep learning.